Or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes and Co. Coming up tonight.
We're still at a stage where the world needs to wake up to the severity of this challenge.
Well, that's Keir Starmer speaking out about the challenge of immigration today. Well, yes, Keir Starmer, some of us woke up to that challenge quite a long time ago, and you've called us all far-right wrong-uns ever since. Anyway, another £75 million of your taxpayer cash will be going towards trying to sort this whole mess out. I wouldn't mind, but did you see the story at the weekend that one fella is on track to basically become a billionaire from the cash that he's making from this whole illegal migrant situation? Also, as well, Kemi Badenoch, she is now the new leader of the opposition. Apparently, though, according to some, she's a white supremacist in blackface. What? Should the MP who endorsed that view have the whip removed? Also, another promise that has been rowed back on, this time tuition fees going to raise by over 3%, the first rise in over 8 years. What do you make to that? And of course, we've got ourselves a whole new shadow cabinet, haven't we? Look who's keeping me company to get stuck into all of that. The panel, Mark Littlewood, the director of the Popular Conservatives, and Sean Simon, the former Labour MP. But first up, the 6 o'clock news headlines.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has announced university tuition fees will increase to £9,535 in England next year. That's an increase of around 3.1%, which the government says is linked to inflation. This will be the first raise in tuition fees in nearly 8 years. Responding for the Conservatives, new Shadow Education Secretary Laura Trott said Labour has declared war on students. Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch has made her first senior appointments as the new leader of the Conservative Party. Former Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride has been appointed Shadow Chancellor, and former Home Secretary Priti Patel has been appointed Shadow Foreign Secretary. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick is now the new Shadow Justice Secretary. Laura Trott has been appointed the Shadow Education Secretary, with Neil O'Brien appointed as the Shadow Minister of State for Education. Dame Rebecca Harris will be the party's chief whip, replacing Stuart Andrew. Nigel Huddleston and Lord Dominic Johnson have also been appointed as the joint party chairman. In other news, the Prime Minister has announced an extra £75 million to tackle people smuggling gangs. Sir Keir Starmer says he wants the country's approach to border security to change, saying the world needs to wake up to the severity of this challenge. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say at the Interpol conference in Glasgow earlier today.
We understand how these gangs work. We can invest in new capabilities and enhance powers to smash them. So we're giving our new Border Security Command an additional £75 million of new funding on top of the £75 million we've already committed. This will support a new organised immigration crime intelligence unit, hundreds of new investigators and intelligence officers, backed by state-of-the-art technology.
Farmers across England have been left worried for their future after the completely unfair change to inheritance tax for farms. That's according to the National Farmers Union. NFU President Tom Bradshaw made the comments after meeting with Environment Secretary Steve Reed today to discuss farmers' fury over Rachel Reeves' inheritance tax raid. Dubbed the tractor tax, it was announced in last week's budget that inheritance tax relief for farms will be limited to £1 million, meaning all assets passed down above that threshold will be taxed. A former Scotland rugby captain has pleaded guilty to a domestic abuse charge against his estranged wife. Stuart Hogg admitted shouting and swearing and acting in an abusive manner towards his former partner, Gillian. He also admitted repeatedly tracking her movements and sending messages of an alarming and distressing nature. The court heard Hogg's behaviour left the mother of his children scared and wishing for it to be morning as soon as possible. Over to the US now, where Donald Trump has taken to the stage in North Carolina on the final day of campaigning to decide the next president of the United States. Candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are touring swing states in a final push for what is being described as a neck-and-neck election. Polls in states such as Pennsylvania and Michigan show the two candidates are tied ahead of tomorrow's election day. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that. My name's Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got my panel. Mark Littlewood, the director of the Popular Conservatives, and Sean Simon, the former Labour MP. Good evening, gents, to both of you. You're very welcome tonight. As are each and every single one of you at home, what is on your mind tonight? It's been a busy old day, certainly when it comes to UK politics, hasn't it? Tuition fees, they are going to be increased. What do you think to that? Only by quite a small amount, I've got to say. Also, we've had Keir Starmer speaking out, haven't we, about immigration and how we all need to be alert and aware of it. You don't say. All of that, plus lots more. You can get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to Twitter or X. You can get me there. Or, of course, to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Wherever you're watching or listening, you're very welcome tonight. So let's cross live then, shall we, to our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, a very busy day in UK politics today. Bring us up to speed with what everyone's missed today.
Hi, Michelle. Yeah, welcome to the historic Westminster Hall here. 1,000 years of history these walls have borne witness to, and today's been a bit dramatic too, I think. We've seen the government announce the first increase in 8 years in tuition fees for students going up in higher education, going up from £9,250, frozen that way for 8 years until next year when they go up by inflation, £9,000 to £9,535. The maintenance allowance also goes up for students who are on low incomes and need help with their living costs. So a big moment there for this government, and we'll see how that plays out amongst students who notoriously do protest quite a lot and will be upset by this, not least because those who supported Sir Keir Starmer to be Labour leader back in 2020, he promised then, get this, he would support the abolition of tuition fees and invest in lifelong learning. So he's been on his own journey, as they say, in politics, from wanting to abolish tuition fees to increasing them for the first time in 8 years as soon as he becomes Prime Minister. That one will run. To that, the Tory party has been getting its own house in order after we saw Kemi Badenoch beat Robert Jenrick at the weekend to be the new Conservative Party leader. I can confirm moments ago that Robert Jenrick, the individual who was beaten by Kemi Badenoch, is the new Shadow Justice Secretary. That's interesting. It means he's got control of a review of membership of the European Convention on Human Rights, and we all know where he sits on that issue. Of course, he was formerly an immigration minister in the last last government. Other names that we'll need to know more of in coming months and weeks are Laura Trott, she's the new Shadow Education Secretary, Neil O'Brien, the new Shadow Education Minister, plus Nigel Huddleston and Dominic Johnson, Lord Johnson. Those are two new shadow chairs of the party. Also Rebecca Harris as Chief Whip. I also can say that I've talked to some senior people in the party's finances. They say that donations are being pledged to the party right now in quite a big number. Apparently donors are quite happy about Kevin Bain not being made leader. She is quite interesting, I think, for other people to hear what he's got to say. Other names to watch out for: by 10 a.m. tomorrow, Michelle, they will have appointed the entire shadow cabinet. Other names to look out for: Laura Trott, Helen Wakely, Andrew Griffiths, Alex Burkhart, Andrew Bowie, Julia Lopez, Claire Coutinho. All those guys might get jobs in the Shadow Cabinet. We know that Mel Stride is the new Shadow Chancellor and Dame Priti Patel is in as Shadow Foreign Secretary. All that means is that some names are leaving the front bench for a while now. Jeremy Hunt has gone, we know that, and James Cleverly, Oliver Dowden, he is also off, as is Stephen Barclay, and of course Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister, won't be anywhere near the front bench anytime soon. So a whole new group coming in, it looks like it, and the Tory party. Again, a much smaller party. They'll look to try and build that support over the coming 4 years. And the day started with me outside Conservative Central Office, where Kemi Badenoch told her team there she can beat Labour at the next election, overturn 171 majority in the Commons in one Parliament. That has never been done before, but then Kemi Badenoch is thinking big.
Well, never say never. Christopher, thank you very much for that. Lots to discuss to each and every one of you at home, but let's start, Mark Littlewood, with these new appointments. Are you happy with them?
Yeah, a reasonable start, I think. The Robert Jenrick appointment's probably the most interesting one, because the policy, I'm not sure it was a policy difference, but a difference in emphasis between him and Kemi in the leadership election was Robert was absolutely unambiguous, get out of ECHR. Yeah. Kemi was more sort of, well, maybe, maybe not. Had Jenrick been made Shadow Home Secretary, he would have won that policy battle. Shadow Justice Secretary, though, where his portfolio includes the judiciary, and from what Chris Hope was saying, a review of ECHR, that suggests to me that the Tories are going to probably move in that direction. Priti Patel as Foreign Secretary, her against David Lammy, that is going to be absolute box office, can't wait for that one. Mel Stride, that's kind of a safety first appointment, I would say. Wise old owl, lots of experience in the previous government, probably more of an establishment Tory than a radical Tory, but, some experience as well as new blood, as Chris pointed out. The big one to look for, which we haven't heard about yet, is Shadow Home Secretary, effectively the immigration brief.
Who do you think that should be?
I wanted it to be Jenrick, but I think it's probably going to have to be someone who can take the fight to Farage on immigration.
Like who?
I'm completely open-minded on that, but I think it probably needs to be somebody who was in the Jenrick camp rather than the Badenoch camp over the last few weeks.
Sean, your thoughts?
I think we need to just remind people it's a very unusual shadow front bench because it's an incredibly unusually tiny parliamentary Conservative party. There's 121 Tory MPs, 90 of them will be on the front bench. That's roughly what you get to shadow. So if you take away all the ones who don't want to be, that Christopher Hope listed in his piece, and people who are, deputy speakers and chairs of select committees and that thing, it's basically everybody who is available is going to be on the front bench. So the normal process where it's kind of the best and the brightest and some of the old, that's not the process. It's literally the whole party, and then it's a question of where you put people rather than who the people are. So there's an awful lot now in this shadow cabinet who wouldn't be in a normal Conservative shadow cabinet because they haven't got enough experience, because they might not be good enough. Although, actually, they might be. I think the danger for Labour is complacency. I think the danger for Labour is to say, like, who are all these people? Kemi Badenoch's too right-wing. We're so far ahead with our majority that we're almost certain to win the next election. And I don't think that's true at all. I think everything could change.
You talk about who's good enough and all the rest of it. Well, actually, Dawn Butler, she's come under a lot of focus, shall we say, to put it mildly, because there seemed to have been a lot of... When Kemi Badenoch actually won over the weekend, there were so many people that were so quick, straight out the gate, to comment on her skin colour. And I've got to say, Dawn Butler was one of these people. She retweeted, so she didn't write this, but she retweeted it, saying essentially, a member of white supremacist black collaborator class was how Kemi Badenoch was regarded, white supremacy in blackface. What do you think to that? There's a lot of people calling for Dawn to lose the whip.
I mean, I think that was a ridiculous thing for the person who wrote the tweet to have said. Clearly a mistake for her to have retweeted it. To be fair, she didn't say that herself, and she very quickly deleted the tweet, presumably very quick. Perhaps having actually read what it actually said all the way through, she deleted it.
Yeah.
No doubt that was an absolutely wrong thing to say.
Not her first offence, though, is it?
Not her first offence.
I mean, Sean's right that with regard to the Conservatives, about 3/4 of them would be needed in order to man-mark Labour on a one-to-one basis. I think just keep your eyes on the main shadow cabinet positions. It's going to be very hard to man-mark every junior minister and PPS right the way down the line. It's going to be who are the 2025 in the shadow cabinet. It's going to be zonal marking rather than man-marking, in order to use a football term. I think. Dawn Butler, I mean, we might come on to that a bit later, I guess.
We will. In fact, actually, you've teed that up well. We will come on to that, because I do want to do this justice, you know, because you say about retweeting stuff. It was only about 5 minutes ago where we were all being told if we retweet stuff, do you remember during the riots and stuff, if we retweet stuff, we might even find ourselves potentially in prison.
Right.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Right, up and down the country, many parents are preparing or have indeed already sent their child off to university.
Indeed, but sometimes it can leave parents struggling to cope with the, quote, empty nest syndrome their child leaves behind. So joining us now to discuss how to cope with sending off your sprogs to university, or not so sprogs, is broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy. Nice to see you this early. This is a real thing, isn't it? It's our colleague Paul Coitz, our sports expert, describes it as grief, sending your young adults off to uni and leaving the nest for the first time.
Yes, I think grief is the right word, because it's an ending, and it's not just an ending with your relationship with your child. It changes from here on in, but it also is very much about your identity. Your identity as a parent is weakening. You'll always be that child's parent, but you're not going to have the same involvement on a daily basis. And so you're left to think, OK, well, what does my life look like going forward? What's my relationship? If you're in a relationship with a partner, how is that going to change? And like all elements of grief, there's going to be a bit of a process. There's going to be that transition period where you adjust to your new life, just as your sprogs, as you call them, are adjusting to their new, exciting phase of their life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Mark Littlewood remains alongside me, as does Sean Simon. So we haven't spoke since the weekend, have we, everyone? So Kemi Badenoch, of course, is the new Tory leader. Tell me at home how you felt when you saw that news on Saturday. Was it the right person for the job for you? Are you happy or not? Do you think that they can turn everything around in one term? That's what Kemi was suggesting. But what do you think to it all? We were just talking before the break, was talking about Dawn Butler. She retweeted something. I think I might even be able to show you it. So, as Sean said, it was a retweet. It was not a direct quote. But it was basically about suggesting that Kemi Badenoch represents white supremacy in blackface and so on and so forth. Now, you were just about to delve into this before the break, so enlighten us more now, Mark.
Well, look, I don't want to get completely het up about all of these retweets and, you know, if it was a genuine error, she should say that. Although I tend to think, generally, you're retweeting things because you either approve of them or think it should have a wider audience. That's typically why you do it. This is not Dawn Butler's first offence by any manner or means. And a luxury that Keir Starmer has, with his majority of 100 trillion or whatever it is that he can kick people out. He can remove the whip from the Labour Party, remove them, make them sit as independents, with absolutely no threat to their parliamentary majority.
That, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, he has been brutal on, you know, John McDonnell and others. Well, I mean, they defied a whip, he kicked them out. This is a luxury you have with a colossal majority. If he was trying to govern with a majority of 6, 8, 10, you've got to be very careful. But he can sack Labour MPs who cross a line, knowing it will not in any way impede his legislative programme. So I'm a bit bewildered that he hasn't taken that opportunity here, especially as I think this is probably Dawn Butler's second or third yellow card offence.
In a second, I'll play you Kwasi Kwarteng. He was on the Camilla Tominey show this weekend, and he had quite strong words, shall we say, to say about this. But I'm interested in potential double standards here, because as I said to you, Sean, when we had the riots, Keir Starmer, he couldn't tell everyone quick enough, him and Yvette Cooper, if you retweet stuff, if you whip up racial hatred, you will find yourself in bother. So why the double standards then?
Well, I mean, I don't think that what she did is comparable to kind of inciting racial hatred.
Do you think it's race baiting?
Racial hatred in a riot.
Do you think it's race baiting? What she said?
I honestly don't know what race baiting means, but I think what she said is completely indefensible. Like I can't stress that clearly enough. A ridiculous thing. Although, to be clear again, she didn't actually say it. And I think that's the answer to Mark's question. She retweeted it and very quickly deleted the retweet.
Oh, that's all right then. There you go. That's how you get yourself out of a spot of bother, everyone. If when Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper tell you that you're not allowed to retweet stuff, and that could be a potential excuse, there's your defence then. Oh, I retweeted it by accident. I've deleted it very quickly. Let's listen to what Kwasi Kwarteng thought about it all, shall we?
She's got form on this.
Yes.
On a personal level, I've always got on with her, but her race baiting is completely crazy.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that if Kemi had lost, she'd have said exactly the same thing.
Yes.
She'd have said, oh, of course, Kemi lost because the Tories are racist and Britain is racist. Now that she's won, she's saying it was racist. I mean, this is insanity.
I mean, it is quite insane to accuse a black person of being a white supremacist.
But in their logic, you know, they put everything through the prism of race baiting and divisiveness.
So what would you say back to the points that Kwasi was just raising there?
I mean, I agree, and I've said quite clearly, I think it was a completely wrong thing to say. Just if nothing else, just rude and distasteful and unpleasant, and you know, there's no place for that, and I don't defend it. But she didn't say it. She retweeted it, which was a mistake, and she very quickly deleted it.
If Nigel Farage If Nigel Farage, or one of the Reform UK lot, had retweeted a similarly offensive tweet, but with the races perhaps, or the skin colours perhaps, reversed, people would be clamouring over themselves to try and get Nigel Farage, etc., in hot water. So for me, it is the double standards of all of this.
I think that's right. And the other thing to mention, Michelle, is, look, there's no suggestion that what she did here has caused a riot or anything like that. It's not a criminal offence, what she did. But one would hope that the Labour Party would hold people to a higher standard than merely you have not committed a criminal offence, right? That the behaviour you would expect of a Member of Parliament of any mainstream party should be to hold much higher standards. So, look, what worries me here is it's not obvious how this story has ended. Is she now on probation? Is she told this is your final and last warning? If in 3 weeks' time you've put up some other offensive music video, which she did a few weeks ago, or retweeted something that you shouldn't have done, then you're out? Or is she going to be able to continue in this vein? Neither Keir Starmer has made that plain, nor has she made especially plain, I think, how she's going to alter her behaviour in future. So that's what I find unsatisfactory. It is a bit too easy, I think, to always demand that the whip is removed from politicians of another political party. But I just don't know what the resolution here has been, and I would have expected the PM or the Labour Chief Whip to have said something a little bit clearer than has actually been said.
Two answers to that off. Firstly, while I take your point that they've got loads of MPs, so they can afford to, be incredibly tough. Nevertheless, just in terms of kind of a natural sense of proportionality.
Sure, that's fair.
And an almost immediately deleted retweet.
Yeah, but no apology, no
That's what I mean,
I got it wrong. Or
that's the second thing I was going to say. The second thing I was going to say was, I think it would. I was going to say would have been, but I don't see why it's too late. I think it would have been better if she would just clarify and apologise.
Well, I would put it to you.
That was a mistake.
But I would put it to you that she probably didn't think it was a mistake. She probably agreed with it, the sentiment contained within that tweet, and decided to retweet it. And then, when there was a huge, rightly so, a huge backlash, probably had some pressure put on to get that tweet taken down. So I would probably put to you that the reason there's no apology is because the sentiment was there, it was shared, it was thought, it was considered, and it was stood by. I think it's absolutely disgusting. A white supremacist in blackface. Why? Because she has the audacity to think differently to other people that perhaps share the same skin tone as her. How offensive and insulting that just because you've got the same skin colour as somebody else, you have to have exactly the same viewpoint or else. Anyway, let me know your thoughts coming up after the break. Keir Starmer, he's had a lot to say today about immigration. Let's look at that, shall we?
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The forecast for tomorrow, and indeed much of the rest of this week, is the same. Most places just dry and fairly drab. Could be a few fog patches tonight, and there should be some sunshine tomorrow, especially in northern Scotland. High pressure sitting to the east of us, keeping the weather fronts behind me at bay, but also keeping a lid on the weather and just trapping this zone of cloud across the country. There has been some breaks today. We've seen some sunshine across the southeast. Breaks in the cloud tonight here could allow some fog to form, so don't let that catch you out in the morning. Certainly not going to be a chilly night with some clearer skies. We could dip down to 4 or 5, but most towns and cities starting Tuesday at 8 or 9 Celsius. Also starting mostly cloudy and staying that way for most of the day. As I mentioned, the potential for some fog patches, which could linger actually across the southeast. Most places, though, just cloudy. Some breaks in the cloud here and there. North Wales could be favoured for a bit of sunshine. Tomorrow, parts of Northern Ireland may see a few glimmers of blue, and I think actually northern Scotland will be favourite for a little bit of sunshine during Tuesday. But otherwise, expect it to be cloudy. That cloud sitting over the hills. So some of the higher routes a bit misty, a bit murky. The cloud thick enough in the west for a little bit of drizzle here and there, particularly around the coast, the east coast of Northern Ireland. Pembrokeshire could see some spots of drizzle, east coast of Scotland too, but actually much of northern Scotland looking fine, dry. Some sunshine here, could see highs of 14, 15 degrees. Some sunny spells in the southeast are possible, 14, 15 here. Where it stays cloudy, 11 or 12. Wednesday's remarkably similar, maybe a bit more fog around in the morning. We should again see some sunny spells over northeast Scotland, some patchy rain across the Western Isles early on. That should clear away. Again, some drizzle here and there, but most places dry and cloudy. A bit of brightness, we'll see those temperatures into the teens. Where it stays cloudy, we're looking at 11 or 12.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in Cheshire on the M56. The eastbound exit slip road remains closed and the Chester services turn off junction 14 at the scene of an accident. In Greater Manchester on the M6 southbound, the inside lane on that 4-lane stretch coned off at junction 25 at Bryn following an accident. And just south of Birmingham city centre at Hollywood, the A435, the Ulster Road, is closed southbound for investigation work following an accident in the early hours. In Oxford, the Banbury Road remains shut between Marston Ferry Road and Oakthorpe Road for accident investigation work. And heading out of London on the M4, the entry slip road is closed to junction 2 at Brentford as you come off the elevated section. A car has broken down. In Cornwall, south of Truro, the A39 is closed off the A390 at the scene of a two-vehicle collision where investigation work is still taking place. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got Mark Littlewood, the Director of Popular Conservatives, and Sean Simon, the former Labour MP. Lots of you have been in touch tonight, I have to say. We're going to be coming on to talk about the tuition fee rise before the end of the programme, but one of my viewers has said, I'm sick and tired of this government. All they seem to do is blame the government, the Tories. Yes, the Tories have made mistakes, but how can we continue with this, essentially for the next 5 years, blaming everything that went wrong on the opposite side? But then the flip side of that, perhaps, it's not the first time this has happened. People do tend to blame past mistakes on the others, don't they, quite often. Someone else has said, I'm all for the Tories, Michelle, but wouldn't it have been nice if the shadow bench was made up of unknowns, a fresh start? But to Sean's point, you've not really got that huge pickings to select from, have you? Lots of people here are writing about Dawn Butler. Lots of you, to summarise, said that she should have her whip removed. Keep your thoughts coming in on that one. But look, Keir Starmer, he has been speaking out today. Let's listen to what he has to say.
We understand how these gangs work. We can invest in new capabilities and enhance powers to smash them. So we're giving our new Border Security Command an additional £75 million of new funding on top of the £75 million we've already committed. This will support a new organised immigration crime intelligence unit.
I thought it was skin. But anyway, more money. Apparently now we've got to wake up and see how serious an issue this is. Mark, your thoughts?
Look, I hope this works, but I don't think it will. It's like trying to smash the gangs in the war on drugs. £75 million, an additional £75 million is not going to crack it. The real underlying problem here is the pull factor. If it is this attractive to come to the UK for so many people, for a whole wide variety of reasons, some of which are completely in the hands of the government, if that pull factor is overwhelming, it doesn't matter if you smash a gang here and a gang there, others will take their place, just like in the war on drugs. Just like in the war on drugs. We've never been able to solve it by smashing the gangs. You've got to change the pull factor. So if people think they can come here, have a very high chance of getting asylum or right to remain, in the meantime are put up in a hotel and have their housing and welfare paid for. If that's the perception and the reality, people will keep coming in illegally to achieve that, and £75 million won't crack it. So look, I'm not against them trying this, but they're approaching this problem down the wrong end of the telescope, frankly.
Is that fair?
Until today's speech by Starmer, I was always a bit sceptical that they would actually succeed in smashing the gangs to anything like the degree that they need to in order to deliver on their election promises. However, today, when he was talking about comparing it to terrorism, I found that quite persuasive. He said we're going to treat these people smuggling criminal gangs bringing people across the channel. We're going to treat them the same way we treat terrorists. And he said, and we know how to deal with terrorism. And I accept that the war on drugs has been a difficult war to win right across the world. But I think the war on terrorism, actually, I think we all underestimate the extent to which the security services and the police, broadly defined, on a constant daily basis, do an extraordinary job in controlling the terrorist threat to this country, which we never see because things don't happen. And I think if they really do treat these people smugglers in the same way as those terrorists, I did for the first time think maybe they actually can.
But here's the problem.
Make a serious dent in this trade.
Here's the problem, isn't it, Sean? That the problem is it's more like the war on drugs because there's hundreds of thousands of people fueling this industry. That's not so true of terrorism. You've got an ideological battle with militia and terrorist networks. Here, just like the war on drugs, you've got hundreds of thousands of people fueling a business, a black economy business. And that, to my mind, makes it much more like the war on drugs. It's not a very, very small coterie of a few fanatics that you need to track down through intelligence services and eliminate or capture. This involves hundreds of thousands of people from across the world. And I think you therefore need to look at the economics of it rather than just the enforcement of it.
So I think that clearly there are hundreds of thousands of people across the world who want to leave the war-torn and impoverished places they come from and get better lives, pretty much in Europe. But the number of people controlling the gangs that are running that trade, I'd say, is a much smaller.
Oh, sure, but it's a seven-headed hydra. If you wipe those out, more will take their place because there's a market for it. There's a market for it. That's the problem.
Well, there's kind of a market for terrorism too. I'm more optimistic that actually, if you make it difficult enough and dangerous enough for those people doing the criminal people smuggling, they can make a serious dent in the trade, particularly given... I take your point about kind of pull factors, but the other side of that coin is in the border countries of the south and the east of Europe, they really have got an issue where people are literally just exiting one place and coming to another place. But that's not true for us, and that actually, if you really can smash the gangs, or that's a silly phrase, but if you really can make a worthwhile dent in them, make it hard enough, make that border strong enough, then frankly, there's a whole lot of other places in Europe that those people can go, and those people smugglers can say, well, OK, we won't bother.
Well, I genuinely hope you're right. I mean, I don't wish ill on this just because it's a Labour Prime Minister who's put it forward. Enforcement was weak under the last Conservative government. You're right, Michelle, when you say, where's the money coming from? But actually, in roundabout terms, 75 million's a rounding error on government expenditure. Well, so I hope it makes a dent.
That's my worry about it.
It's pretty small beer.
It doesn't seem like the kind of beer you need to tackle a problem like this.
I would agree.
To start, at least.
Well, we talk about money. We heard at the weekend, by the way, some fella, he's on track to become the first, quote, immigration industry billionaire, raking in an absolute fortune, £4.8 million a day, apparently, from providing housing and associated services with some of these people. I'm surprised, Sean, to hear you say that when Keir Starmer references terrorism, all of a sudden it makes you feel optimistic, because I would argue, actually, when it comes to terrorism, and I'm not undermining the great work that so many people do to try and keep us safe, much of which we don't see of and hear of. It goes on behind closed doors, and rightly so. But many people will be shouting at the screens, hold on a second, because no one's actually really got the chops to tackle some of the harsh issues around terrorism and who's doing it and why they're doing it and what's motivating them. And the same occurs here. So you can talk tough about terrorism and smashing gangs. There'll be no gang leader, no people smuggler today shaking because Keir Starmer has said, oh, I'm going to treat you like a terrorist, I'm going to come and smash your gang, they won't be shaking in their boots. They won't care. They're not going to care less. And there is nobody paying proper attention to the fact that these people, they do come across from a safe country, France, primarily for economic reasons. People won't even acknowledge that point, because as soon as you say that, people shut you down, call you a harsh so-and-so and a far-right lunatic for pointing out that obvious fact.
I mean, genuinely isn't obvious to me that people have got greater economic opportunity here than in France. I think that the big difference...
But France is a safe country, though,
Why is that? The flow of traffic, then?
The big difference for me between here and France is that in France they've got identity cards, and whereas in this country we haven't, and so in France it's much, much harder to just disappear than it is over here.
But it's a safe country, though, isn't it? So if you're genuinely fearing for your life, if you genuinely feel that you're going to be persecuted by whoever, wherever, if you're in a safe country, then you'd go, whew, you'd mop your brow and you'd celebrate your newfound safety. So when you're safe and then you choose to further your position, you're making a proactive choice that is absolutely, therefore, based on more than just your security and safety.
But I mean, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't understand why you think that people will have a lot of economic opportunity here that they don't have in France. I mean, they're comparable economies.
Because they will get fast-tracked into what can often be a 4-star hotel. They will be met and embraced by, I've lost count of how many charities now that will be helping people, providing facilities. You can work in the black market, delivering takeaways or whatever else it is.
Now, that goes to my point about identity and identity cards, which we don't have here, and they do in France.
Come on, I'm sure there'll be a fraudulent market for identity cards in France. I imagine that if you want to get your mitts on one of those, it's not that difficult.
It's just easier here. But, you know, there is also a much, like a bigger...
A huge number of asylum claims succeed here. So if you're just calculating the odds, you know you've got a very high chance of your asylum claim succeeding. Now, a good number of these claims are legitimate, but a good number aren't. And I think the big problem is we're a soft touch there, and people are not stupid. If we are a soft touch, they know their odds are better on this side of the channel. With or without an ID card, we are giving people asylum status. It takes us about 18 months, usually, to make a goddamn decision. Ludicrous. But nevertheless, your chances are high. And that's what's motivating people travelling across the channel in that direction rather than the other way around.
Keir Starmer spoke tough as well today about the ECHR. He was basically saying that they're never going to leave that. What do you think to that?
Well, I think we should leave it. That's obviously not the position of the present Prime Minister. I think this is the next big Brexit issue, actually. I don't think if you leave ECHR that your immigration and asylum problems are solved overnight, not at all. But I think it would be a useful precursor to actually get our immigration and asylum affairs in order. So the Conservative Party's got to make their mind up on this one, by the way. The Prime Minister has. He and I disagree on it.
I just take an issue with Mark's interpretation of that at the top of the programme. I think Kemi Badenoch was very clear in her leadership campaign, although she didn't say so explicitly. I think the fact that, in spite of all the pressure to go that mile and say we should come out of the ECHR, which has become a Tory totem, the fact that she absolutely refused to do that, I think that tells you that is not where she is going, and I think she's put...
Well, I think she was more... She's open-minded to it, but not committed to it. So I think that's a battle still to be had.
I think she knows perfectly well where she's not going. I think that's where she's not going, and I think that's why she's put Jenrick in that job, to make life uncomfortable and difficult for him. Well,
you talk about people being clear in their leadership campaigns. I can tell you now someone that was very clear when it was their leadership campaign. Keir Starmer, he said, and I quote, I support the abolition of tuition fees. We'll fast forward to 2024. They've just put them up. Your thoughts? See you in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Love a bit of baking and share some hot tips. We're delighted to be joined by our baking extraordinaire, Matty Edgell, who won Great British Bake Off last year. Woo! Welcome. Congratulations as well. I'm sure you're sick of being congratulated.
I know, it's been a nice reminder.
No, you like all the glory.
Yeah. What was it like winning the Great British Bake Off? What's the last year been like for you?
Winning I was not expecting to win. At any point until they said my name.
You're a very humble guy.
Surprise. No,
really?
In touch with reality. I wasn't.
Was it quite a close race throughout then?
Yeah, I considered myself the underdog throughout. I think the first week I turned around after the showstopper and kind of saw how good everyone was, and then looked at mine and thought, how have I got here? And that kind of theme followed through.
But then that surely like an underdog.
Yeah, it did.
Actually, I'm going to get better throughout this.
Yeah, I think it made me kind of like really tune into the feedback that they was giving me and trying to embed that throughout. So that's probably why.
Could you feel yourself improving as the series went on?
Definitely, and I think also, like, kind of simultaneously, my confidence improved at the same time, and then that, like, little bit of belief in myself probably helped out as well.
What was your strength? Biscuits, cake, bread?
I think cake's my strength. I think cake, typically, if you start baking, that's probably where you start, isn't it? So that was what I knew most.
How did you start baking?
I've been asked this so many times since...
You don't know.
I attribute it to my nan. But, yeah, I would say... I think most people probably attribute it to, like, a grandparent or something that they maybe done with, like, their parents when they was growing up. So that's... I'll give it to my nan.
Or the major lockdown baking boom.
Yeah, banana bread.
Everybody...
All over the place, don't it? It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. I love a banana bread, even now.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
Tomorrow night, stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, tomorrow night from 11.
Only on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Mark Littlewood and Sean Simon remains alongside me. Lots of you getting in touch about this extra £75 million. Nicholas says basically it's just another £75 million lost in administration. Maria says this figure will not make any difference at all. And someone else, one of my viewers, has said, why is he telling us to wake up to all of this immigration? We were never asleep to it all, he says. Look, one of my other viewers has said, Michelle, who's this, Shirley, she says, whatever this government have said they will or will not do has been the totally opposite to what they have actually done. Well, of course, then you might be familiar with the fact that only recently they were saying that they wasn't going to put up tuition fees. Well, let's listen today, shall we, to the Education Secretary and what she had to say.
Announcing today that in line with the forecast set out in the budget last week, from April 2025 we will be increasing the maximum cap for tuition fees in line with inflation to £9,535, an increase of £285 per academic year.
So the first rise in many years. Mark, your thoughts?
I'd get rid of this ludicrous cap altogether. It's important to say they're not increasing tuition fees directly. They're increasing the maximum amount a university can charge. If a university wants to charge £5 grand a year, £4 grand a year, £7 grand a year, they can. The most they can charge is legally capped. And I would get rid of that altogether. I think it's led to an oversupply of degrees because rather than saying we'd like to charge, I don't know, 12 grand for this course, Well, rather than say universities have to make the numbers add up. So rather than charging, say, 10 or 11 grand, they need more students at 9 grand. We also have the problem now, 40% of degrees, if you take them, 5 years later, you're on average earning less than £30,000 a year. So I think there's likely oversupply in the university sector, and we should actually basically get rid of the government setting prices in this sector.
Sean?
I agree with a lot of that, and I think they've been pretty clear that today it's an inflation rate rise, and it's an interim measure, but that basically the system is in a mess, and they need to reform the whole system. And I can't see how anybody can seriously disagree with that.
Some people would say, well, hang on a second, why don't they apply VAT to uni fees?
Well, that'd be one way to look at it. I mean, I'm opposed to them applying VAT to private school fees. I think you should look at university not as a right. It's a decision for an adult to make. You are 18 years of age. You start to make a decision. You might be dependent on your parents for some of the support, but you're an adult deciding to spend 2, 3 or 4 years in higher or further education rather than entering the workforce. And I blame actually Tony Blair for having this target that 50% of people must go to university. Not obvious to me that that's the right number, not right for the government to have a target about it. Get out of the university sector, let it compete, let it find its own level, let it set its own prices. And I would hope that some entrepreneurs might be able to come up with degrees which are enormously cheaper. £1,000, £2,000 a year, do them remotely, do them from home, that sort of thing. But at the moment, it's one size fits all, and as Sean says, it's not working at all. The system is a terrible mess.
So Keir Starmer, when he was trying to be the Labour leader in 2020, he said he would support the abolition of tuition fees on the 22nd of July. The Labour Party, Bridget Phillipson, she said, and I quote, there were no plans to increase these fees. On the 15th of August, she also went on to say that raising these would be a really unpalatable thing to be considering. So why do they keep going back on all of the things that they keep saying that they won't do?
Because they haven't got enough money, and these levels have not gone up for 7 years, and if they'd gone up by the rate of inflation since 2017, they'd be 12, 13 grand now instead of 9,250. I mean...
Well, we do seem to have enough money for certain things, don't we? So this claim of poverty only seems to apply to certain things. But this is quite a weak excuse to keep going back on your promises. Literally this one, on the 15th of August, she was saying that these rises would be unpalatable. On the 22nd of July, again, no plans. So we're not talking about a year has gone by and the situation is changed. We're talking a matter of weeks in some cases.
But those were not promises, and I'm absolutely certain that they were completely sincere, and that when she said 2 weeks after coming into office that she had no plans to increase the cap on tuition fees, she meant it. And when she said in August, in a slightly different language, that it was really unpalatable, what that tells you is she had no plans, but now she was starting to think about it, and really hated the idea. And what the fact that she's announced it today tells you is that in the end they've concluded that the higher education system is in such a mess that one of the first things they've got to do is at least let them charge a little bit more on tuition fees. Yeah,
what worries me a little about this, we have no plans. I mean, politicians of all stripes say this, I'm not blaming Labour politicians in particular, is it's not ruling something out. And I'm a bit worried that this government apparently didn't have any plans, because the rough fiscal position of the UK has been well known for some time. I know there's this argument about whether there was a black hole of 22 billion. I'm not sure there was, but it was a rounding error. The public finances are in the public domain. And frankly, the incoming Labour Education Secretary should have had a plan to do this. I'm a bit surprised there was no plan earlier. There should have been a plan. It was the obvious thing to do. I probably would have abolished it entirely or put it up more. Why wasn't there a plan? It seems to be that there's too many Labour frontbenchers who are guided by wishful thinking, that I hope I don't have to do anything difficult or unpalatable. I'll therefore say there's no plan to do anything difficult or unpalatable. Then, when I actually look at the numbers, I have to do something difficult and unpalatable. Far, far better to be honest from the outset about the overall state of public finances, to prioritise within those public finances and to have a plan, rather than to keep saying that you've got no plans in each and every area of policy.
I mean, it's a good point, doesn't it?
I mean, in a way, he does make a good point. But when they say we've got no plans, as Mark said right at the beginning, what that really means, and people understand that it really means, is we're not ruling it out. We haven't decided that we're going to do it, but we're not ruling out the possibility that we might have to do it. And the real truth, as Mark also knows just as well as I do, is that there's a huge resource and knowledge gap between opposition and government in this country. Government is the resources of the British state, of one of the great nations, and opposition. You have a researcher recently out of university trying to help you try and keep up with all the parliamentary debates and this, that and the other you've got to do on a daily and weekly basis. And it is actually true that it's not really until you get into government that you are, as a minister, that you are properly able to have the whole array of the state and the system at your disposal, and to be advised in the depth and detail that you need
but
to make
Sean, come on.
in
In a spreadsheet in my own living room, I can work out the global numbers without a researcher. It's transparently obvious that Britain is taxed extremely high, borrowing too much and spending too much. Those figures need to be brought into alignment.
Well, there you go. CJ says, Michelle, they need to stop all these useless courses and that would fix the university problems in an instant. Not many people sharing Starmer's thoughts that he can smash the gangs tonight, I've got to say. Look, that's all I've got time for, gents. Thank you. Thanks you at home. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow. No nights.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The forecast for tomorrow, and indeed much of the rest of this week, is the same. Most places just dry and fairly drab. Could be a few fog patches tonight, and there should be some sunshine tomorrow, especially in northern Scotland. High pressure sitting to the east of us, keeping the weather fronts behind me at bay, but also keeping a lid on the weather and just trapping this zone of cloud across the country. There has been some breaks today. We've seen some sunshine across the southeast. Breaks in the cloud tonight here could allow some fog to form, so don't let that catch you out in the morning. Certainly not going to be a chilly night with some clearer skies. We could dip down to 4 or 5, but most towns and cities starting Tuesday at 8 or 9 Celsius. Also starting mostly cloudy and staying that way for most of the day. As I mentioned, the potential for some fog patches which could linger actually across the southeast. Most places though just cloudy. Some breaks in the cloud here and there. North Wales could be favoured for a bit of sunshine. Tomorrow parts of Northern Ireland may see a few glimmers of